Thank you for being here this morning. And no, it isn't raining up there.
Nope.
Just teasing. Well, seriously, thank you for being here so we can share in community and share in the love. Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I decided to title my message A Call to Love. And I'm sure all of you, if not most of you, have heard about the greatest commandment that we read about in the Bible. And basically, Jesus tells us that the greatest commandments are about love, right? Loving God and loving your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
But before I get into that, let me ask you something. Why should you avoid marrying a tennis player? Because love means nothing to them.
Yeah.
I'm glad you know a little bit about tennis players. So, we actually hear about the great commandment from all three synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and slightly different. And Luke actually has a little, if you call it, extension from it, and I'll touch on that as well. So I'll start with Matthew 22, verses 34 through 40, where we read, "When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked them a question to test them. 'Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?'" Now, consider this, that in the Old Testament, the Jews had, and I guess they still do have, 613 commandments or laws. So, they're asking him choose one. If you had to choose one from 613 choices, how easy would it be for you? Not too easy, right? But what does Jesus say? He says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." And he goes on. "This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." So he's basically saying that these two commandments are above everything else, any other laws about the Sabbath, any rituals, any moral codes. He's saying above all that, love God and love your neighbor. And he says that the second one is like it. So the way I read this, he's kind of putting them evenly. If you're gonna love God, you're gonna love your neighbor as well, and vice versa. So I mentioned that I wanted to add to this specific story, and in Luke, we actually read a little more into it, and it's from Luke 10:25 through 37, and it's when Jesus answers the Pharisee, to save face, he's like, "Oh, let me throw him another question." And he asks him, "Who is my neighbor?" And what does Jesus answer? He tells him a parable about the Good Samaritan. And I'm sure most of you have heard of this, if not all of you, about the person the guy that was walking between Jerusalem and Jericho, I think it was, yes. And he gets assaulted, he gets robbed, he basically gets beat up, and they leave him half dead. And a priest happens to be walking by, and what does the priest do? He crosses the street to the other side. And then a Levite does the same thing. And then a Samaritan goes by, whom, if you know your Bible, the Jews and the Samaritans did not get along at all. What does the Samaritan do? He actually goes and helps him. And he takes him to somewhere that he can keep him overnight, and he even pays for his stay and tells him that when he comes back, he'll pay more if he needs to. So Jesus asked the Pharisee, who do you think is that person's neighbor? Right? The Good Samaritan, right? So who is your neighbor? Your neighbor is not necessarily somebody that lives right next to you, or that looks like you, or comes from the same place that you do. Your neighbor is somebody that is willing to lend a helping hand, to be of service, and to help you. Who would like a neighbor like that? And you can be honest if you want. Who has a neighbor like that? I hope all of you do one. Even if they don't live right next to you, right? So yes, Jesus is putting the Sabbath, the ritual laws, everything ahead of this. And I got a couple of stories from the Bible to add to this. So in Luke 14, 1-6, we read, on one occasion when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. Just then in front of him, there was a man who had a demon. And Jesus asked the expert in the law and Pharisees, is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not? But they were silent. So Jesus took him and healed him and sent him away. Then he said to them, if one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on a Sabbath day? And they could not reply to this. So yes, he's putting the love of someone or something, even his ox, the ox, or even a pet, above any other laws that don't have anything to do with actually loving somebody and putting any kind of rituals or laws, behind what we know as love, right? There's another one from Matthew 15, 1-3, where we read, then the Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands before they eat. He answered them, and why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition? So right there, to reiterate, love your neighbor more than you love your laws. Now, what do we know about love, right? We know that Charles Fuller, Unity co-founder, in his book, The Revealing Word, he says that love is the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. Think about that. Let me repeat that. Love is the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. And he goes on to say, in divine mind, which means God, divine spirit, he says, love is the power that joins and binds in divine harmony the universe and everything on it. So think about that. Love binds all of us, and it binds everything in the universe. How lovely is that, huh? Now, you may have heard of Franciscan friar Richard Rohr, who wrote a book called The Universal Christ. And I'll tell you a little something. I actually, when I read this book, I didn't realize I had seen him before in a documentary movie that I had seen a few years back called One. If you get a chance to watch it, I would highly suggest it. These two guys go around interviewing spiritual leaders, and it took me by surprise that two of these leaders are basically two Catholic priests that they talked to, and one of them was Richard Rohr. When I heard him answer the way he was answering them the questions, I was like, this guy sounds like Unity. He sounds like any Unity minister or anyone that knows a lot about unity. He sounded just like it the way he talked. And when I read his book, it made sense. When I realized that I had seen him before, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. He is so unity that he could easily just fall right into in line with us here, to be honest. If you haven't, the easiest thing would be, I would suggest maybe go to YouTube and just Richard Rohr with, let me spell it for you, R-O-H-R. And he's just got a beautiful soul and a beautiful mind, and he really brings religion into a more spiritual realm, into a more, I'm gonna call it modern realm. And the way he speaks, it's a little bit like, why haven't they, what's the word, excommunicated from the Catholic Church? Apparently they have tried. But he's able to go to the Bible and say, this is why I'm saying what I'm saying, and they can't get rid of him. So he is very brilliant. So all that to say, so he actually matches what Charles Fullmer was talking about love, about binding everything. The way he puts it in his book, he says, love might be called the attraction of all things toward all things. Remember that. Just think about that. Attraction, uniting everything. So, and he goes on to say that, I guess what I'm trying to say is you gotta be careful, right? Because he says that love is also a universal language and underlying energy that keeps showing itself despite our best efforts to resist it. So it's always there, just like we say that God is always there, right? We just have to become conscious of that presence, of that divine presence. So even though you may not be feeling loving towards somebody at some point, know that that love is always there, and you can just become conscious of that, and maybe start seeing that person differently, so that maybe you can see the love in them. I forget who I heard say, you may not like somebody, but you can still love that somebody. Consider that. Richard Rohr also tells us that when it comes to being conscious of the love and how to bring this forth, he talks about you can start with the love of God or with the love of neighbor and then work towards the love of God. And he says that all of us need someone or something to connect our heart with our heads. He goes on to say that love grounds us by creating focus, direction, motivation, even joy. And if we don't find these things in love, we usually will try to find them in hate. Has anybody witnessed that? Think about that we grab on to someone that is spewing hate, and we put all these qualities into them, and we think we're doing good by following them. So we have to be careful with that. So remember, if you're trying to focus on something, let's focus on something that is doing good, that is doing good for others, that is loving. I'm sure you've heard this example before. It's always the easiest thing for me to have that focus of love, of that compassion and that indwelling spirit is the parents towards their children, right? When you have your son, your daughter that comes into the world, it is very easy to just have complete focus on that. Now, I want you to consider that focus that you have on that loved one. To be open to it. I'm going to say be open to bringing that to everyone else that you meet, to everyone else that you run into. Could be a loving pet. And I like to also add, how do we bring this focus of love everywhere we go? I want you to consider that whatever you witness around you throughout the day, I'm going to say attempt to be in awe of it. yes, oddly enough, we can walk out here and look to the left, and what's up there? The highway, right? What if you can bring some of that love when you're on the road with others around you? I'm not gonna say that I'm perfect, and my wife will be the first one to say that, yes, he's right. But there have been times where, like, I get on the road and I decide to just be at peace and flow with whatever is going on. And the traffic seems to flow a little easier. Maybe I see a fewer crazies speeding down the road, right? And it really is a consciousness. I'll give, what I really do every time I get into the car to drive, I send a blessing to everyone. And then I said the blessing of our prayer for protection when I'm in the car. And that gives me that intention and that feeling of safety as I go. And I am more at ease, and I don't worry too much about who's gonna cut me off, or who's going too fast, or this and that. Or even, like we witnessed yesterday, I'm gonna say it must have been a couple of hundred motorcycles going down the main road in Orlando, just revving up and everything. They must have gone together and said, okay, we're gonna go down this road, the couple hundred of us. The way we witnessed it, we were pulling up to fuel up. By the time I fueled up, got in the car and started driving, they were still coming. That's how many of these motorcycles and those 3-wheelers and everything was going by. So yeah, take that intention of love, of compassion, I'm gonna say of calm and peace and safety with you, wherever you go. And that is a practical way. We are supposed to be a practical way of Christianity here. So let's make this practical wherever we go. So, like I was mentioning, if you see a bird, if you see the trees, really be in awe of it. I'm being reminded, I happened to be here for the sunrise Easter service that I was asked to do, and being out there in that park or looking the water around the trees and the people that were there, there was just a sense of peace and joy that you can't, I'm gonna dare say, don't always get in a room, right? But by the same token, it is your intention that counts, isn't it? So if you come in here with the intention to be in communion with everyone else here, to be in communion with God, and to be loving, so that you can get that spirit within you and bring it with you wherever you go the rest of the day and the rest of the week, I would suggest to do that. Now, I was thinking about this, is like when you're in awe of things and you're moving through life in awe of things, I like to think that it's easier to get to know, at least for that season in your life, what your passion is. And I don't know if you've experienced it the way I have, that your passion might change throughout your life. My first passion, I could say, was music. And I may have mentioned this here before. And as time went by and I got myself more into my spiritual work, I realized that became my passion. And that's how I ended up becoming a unity minister. So your passion may shift or it may change. So be open to whomever you meet, wherever you go. I was hearing something about like meeting your soulmate or this or that. Your soulmate may be somebody today, but in a couple of years from now, your soulmate might be somebody else. And the way I'm speaking about this is that technically, I like to think from that I gather that whoever we are meeting, whoever we run into, whatever kind of relationship we have, that's a type of soulmate, or else we would not be together. I don't think, right? You probably heard it said before that before we come into this world, we make agreements with other souls. That I'm gonna do this for you so you can learn this, and so on and so forth. So my call to love for you is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. And love everything you experience, everyone you encounter. And learn from this so you can follow your passion and be open to your passion shifting from season to season. So you can take this with you today and be the love you want to see in the world.